Welcome everybody to the Crawford Family Forum. This is a really exciting event we've got planned for you today. Lots of surprises, lots of cool science. Hopefully we'll all learn some stuff. I take it from the audience, I've heard some of you chatting before the show, that some of you might know more about Tesla than I do, which is great. I'm glad that there's a lot of fans here. This is a scientist who deserves a lot of credit, a lot of enthusiasm, and it's certainly inspired a lot of people. So I'm excited that we can all celebrate his birthday 10 days late, but you know we were a little booked on the 10th. So yeah, I want to just talk to you a little bit about the show today. Like Janice mentioned, it is co-produced by Brains On. This is a new science show we're putting together to help get kids more interested in science. We know that the sciences are something that studies have shown sometimes kids tend to drop their interest in as they go through school, and we think that's a crime because America needs scientists, and science is just awesome, and so there's no reason anyone should lose their interest in it. We're trying to help fix that. That's what Brains On does. Right now it's a podcast, a website, some social media stuff. We're on iTunes. Feel free to check it out. The show's free. There's maybe a dozen episodes so far, and they cover all sorts of topics like how you catch a cold, to how does water get to your tap, to why did dinosaurs have feathers, that kind of stuff. So feel free to check it out, download it, become a subscriber, and get educated on some cool stuff. Okay, so this is the man du jour here, Nikola Tesla. Speaking of things to do, we have displays, by the way, speaking of getting kids involved in science. We're going to have a display from the California Science Center outside where you can play around with some electrical kind of equipment. It's totally safe, trust me. And we've got a display in the back about radio, so you can see how radio has progressed through the years. It's a technology that Tesla worked with a little bit, and one that is kind of important to what we do here at KPCC, just a little. So check that out, and you can see kind of how cumbersome technology has turned into these tiny little chips that now could fit in your pocket. So, okay, who was Tesla? Who was Nikola Tesla? Anyone here heard of him before this event? All right, good. Yeah, a little. He's a man with a lot of myth around him. Was he this genius? Was he a free thinker? Was he just some mustachioed old-timey guy? A weirdo, a mad scientist, a revolutionary. These are all kinds of things that we associate with this great man who did a lot and also had a very bizarre and interesting time here on Earth. So we're going to go through some of that and also talk about some of his technologies. He's responsible for all sorts of things we use every day. One of the biggest being the AC electrical system, alternating current electricity. So if you've ever plugged anything in, anybody? Tesla had a lot to do with you being able to do that the way we do it these days. He also pioneered some stuff that led to, or was related to X-rays. He, might have been one of the, he worked with things that led to stuff like neon signs. He was kind of all over the map, a guy who was very busy, constantly experimenting, getting his hands dirty in all kinds of science for the benefit of everybody. So let's talk about where he came from. He was born on July 10th, as I mentioned, in what we today call Croatia. Legend has it, he was born during a lightning storm, actually on the stroke of midnight between the 9th and 10th. And it's hard to say what exactly that meant, but we have to sort of think there's some foreshadowing there that the higher powers thought like he's going to come in with a big boom of an entrance because that's what he's all about. It might have just been coincidence, whatever. Either way, Tesla was born in a lightning storm. He grew up with a vivid imagination. He had these descriptions in his own writing about himself that he would see these visions. He would often see really, really vivid hallucinations. He learned to channel them, and a lot of that will go into, you'll see later, the kind of inventions he did and where his ideas came from. But it's important to keep that in mind, that he had this vivid imagination, that he was a very mental, visual kind of person where he saw things in his mind even as a young man, even as a young boy, and he carried that through his whole life. He also, one of my favorite stories is that he was inspired to go into science by his cat, or like he got his love of electricity from his cat. He had this cat and he would stroke it and he would notice these little sparks would fly. Has anyone ever done that, stroking a cat and you kind of get like electroshock? Yeah. So Tesla saw this and was like, wow, what is this, Dad? And his dad was like, oh, that's electricity, it's the same thing that lightning's made out of. And so being a brilliant guy, he was immediately like, whoa, what if the whole universe is a giant cat? And then he thought to himself, who's stroking the cat's back to get all the electricity and lightning we have? But it goes to show he was already thinking about these questions even before he really knew the science behind them. So here's him at age, I think this was 23. He's got a really cool hipster tie there, nice haircut, looking spiffy. He was a very strong student. So when he went to school, he would study very hard. His dad wanted him to go into religion. For a while, they were talking of him going into the military, but he got really interested in electrical engineering, which was kind of a hot topic at the time. He went to various schools and was known for almost working himself to death. So if any of you out there think you're studying too much, keep in mind Tesla would study from like 6 in the morning to 11 at night, maybe more, and then he would not even give himself weekends to rest. He got top grades, but some of his professors actually expressed concern that he would just burn himself out learning so much. Well, luckily that didn't happen, but he did go through some nervous breakdowns when he was younger. He dropped out of school, had a serious gambling addiction, kicked that, straightened himself out, studied some more, and eventually wound up in the telephone and telegraph industry, where he was putting his electrical engineering skills to use. There, he learned a lot about complicated electrical systems, how to wire them, make them do cool things, how to make phones work better. He was basically one of those guys who would solve problems, the kind of person we all wish we had in our life, who you're like, oh man, my toaster's blowing up, or I can't seem to get my DVR to record any of my shows. He just seems like the kind of guy who'd figure that out, fix it, and it would probably work even better. Your toaster would suddenly not just be able to toast, but also perhaps like make you an omelet. So he had this job. He got great recommendations from people, and he eventually decided to go out to America to help a guy named Thomas Edison. Anyone ever heard of this guy? So Thomas Edison was already working on building electrical systems to try to power America. And Tesla decided to go out to America to work with Thomas Edison. He got a recommendation from a former supervisor. It's a short letter of recommendation, or at least the part that I'm going to read you, but it's pretty powerful. The man said, I know two great men. This is addressed to Thomas Edison. I know two great men. One of them is you. The other is this young man. So with those words, announcing his way, he moved to New York City in 1884. And Tesla would end up dramatically changing the future of electricity as we know it. But before we go into what he did and how he did it, I would like to bring up somebody who's going to help us talk a little bit more about what electricity is, how it works, and what was going on at the electricity at the time that would make Tesla's inventions really stand out. So everybody, please join me in welcoming to the stage Shaka Jaliwa from the California Science Center Foundation.
Hi.
Okay, so we're all set here to talk a little bit about electricity. First question, why do you love electricity?
I love electricity because, like every young adult, I played video games growing up. I'm in that age where it was a really big part of my life, and I kind of just wanted to know what made all the things around me work, and especially video games, because I still play them pretty much daily. Do the kids know what I'm talking about, at least? Parents are like, I no. Did parents have video games when they were growing up? Wasn't it the one that was like, ding, ding? But yeah, so I just wanted to know how my world was working outside of the things that were natural. I don't know why, but I always wanted to know more about the things that were artificial or man-made, because I felt like I could actually do something with that. And so I became an electrical engineer, just like Tesla.
Great. So, okay, this might be a big question. We'll see if we can answer it. What is electricity? Aside from that thing that happens when you stroke your cat's back, there might be a more scientific explanation we could try to throw out there.
There is, and the most simple way that I could explain it is the movement of charged particles. So if you guys know about atoms, atoms have both protons and electrons and also neutrons. But usually when you're talking about electricity, you're talking about a moving charge that is usually an electron. And so that charge can either move levels inside of the electron or sometimes jump out of the atom. That electrically charged negative electron can move out of the atom to a different atom, or it can move levels inside of the same atom. And that actually can give us light, that can give us electric charge, that can give us radio waves. Basically, everything that we have that is electric or light-based is from the movement of electrons.
And we see electricity everywhere in the world. You see it with both our electrical systems powering these lights that are glaring in my face, to lightning, like we said, static electricity, but also our bodies have little electrical impulses in them too. It's really kind of one of those things that's just like buried in the fabric of our entire world.
Yeah, and it's not something that we understood too well, but it's something that we're getting a better understanding of because of all the research that people like Tesla have done.
So we know that electricity powers stuff. We know that it's basically energy being passed, like you said, through atoms. How does it charge stuff, though? How does it power things? How are we using it to make, for instance, these lights go on?
So these lights are going on because The force is called electromagnetism, or So this one is a little bit harder for me to explain. But the way that a motor perhaps would be a good way to go for it is the way that a motor would be, and I actually have a little motor behind me. I'm going to grab it.
Oh, yeah.
No worries. I can bring it up. I'm fine. The way that something like a motor would work is that you would attach some power source. This is a direct current power source. You'd attach it, and the electrons would move through. And so as the electrons are moving through, what works with motors is that there's also magnets inside of it. And so you're using the two related forces, electricity and magnetism, because they're all a part of electromagnetism. And when you pass the electricity through, it actually makes the magnet want to move. And the way that you do that with this kind of motor is like a little brush, if anyone's ever heard of a brush motor before. And that brush is contacting the magnet and the spinning, I don't know what to call it. I'm freezing. Rotor.
Yeah.
We'll go with rotor.
We'll go with rotor.
And so as the electricity comes through, the magnet will often change polarity and circle. And it's really hard to explain. And I don't know why I decided to go with that.
We basically have particles running, or charged particles running through here, affecting the motor because of the force that they kind of give off, the electromagnetic force, and that can make something spin. And so we're sort of moving, even though it looks like nothing's moving but the tip of the motor there, there's actually, you're saying, energy moving through this entire circuit here, starting from the battery and going all the way to translating into the physical energy of that little thing spinning around.
Yes, the energy is moving through the wires, and inside of here there's a magnet that is changing polarity. I'm so bad at this. I'm so nervous also. But those kinds of things, that electric charge moving through the wires that we have in our home, those are what are powering all of our devices.
Yeah. Well, so you have an actual demonstration we could show and talk a little bit about electricity here, show and tell. So why don't we go to that, and we're going to just stand over here. Hopefully everyone can see this stuff, but we've got some cool gadgets we're going to play with. Yeah. Let's just move it forward. Has anyone here ever been shocked by electricity by accident? Yeah.
That's why I have these gloves.
That's why we have the protective gloves of science here. All right, so what are we going to do here?
Well, the first thing that I wanted to really do was see if I could help you guys understand the difference between direct current and alternating current. And people know that there is a difference, right? Who could give like a little short thing about what direct current is? Or like give me an example of something that utilizes direct current. Flashlight, batteries, anything powered by a battery basically. And so that was my motor here. Had my little motor. This uses direct current. And everything has a full circuit, right? So you have to close the circuit in order for it to work. And so if I take this off, then no more circuit, no more working.
So basically it has to be a loop. There has to be a sort of connection. You cut part of the wire, and then boom, there's no more circuit, electricity's not flowing, motor stops doing its little spinny dance.
Exactly. And that's true of alternating current as well. And I have something, we were talking over the phone about a good way to explain alternating current, and this guy, has anyone ever seen one of these before? This was the best way that I'd ever seen in like a very small contained environment to explain it. Because in alternating current, it's going back and forth. Every now and then it's going to reverse direction. And so what that means is that the electrons are not moving as much as they would be if you were trying to power the world with direct current. Say you wanted to power something here in Los Angeles using a large battery in New York, for example. Would that be easy to do with direct current? No, it'd be very hard. And you'd be moving electrons all the way from New York all the way over here eventually.
So imagine like if you had a tube full of these little balls, and direct current would basically be shooting ball after ball after ball after ball through the tube, which means you'd have to have a lot of balls, and it would take a lot of energy to do that. The nice thing, as we've found out about this demonstration, it kind of shows you here when you do this, some of these don't have to move very much at all, and you don't have to pump as much through the system to get that same thing of getting these two to wiggle at the end there, to basically move back and forth. So alternating current ends up being a lot more efficient than direct current. Even though we use it for batteries and stuff, direct current is great, has its uses, but alternating current seems to be a lot better for large systems.
Yes, and so we're going to do some stuff with alternating currents up here. I have my power supply. Whoop. Everybody has one of these at home, right? And you have 2? I have 4 in my room alone. And so you plug in a light bulb, comes on. Plug in another light bulb, also comes on. Did you notice a dip in the intensity of the light? No. And that's because of something called parallel versus series connections. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that because that is something that I find very interesting.
So like if we had, for instance, if electricity was water and we had a certain amount of water filling up one cup, if we then put another cup there and use the same water, you'd think, okay, they'd both be half as much. But because of the way this is set up, they're actually both getting supplied the same amount of electricity. That's why they're both as bright, right?
Right. And so they're getting the same voltage across both devices. And that voltage gets them to glow very brightly. But what I'm going to do now is something called a series circuit. And a series circuit means you connect one after the other. They are not each going to get the same amount of voltage drop. Or they are going to get the same amount, but they're not going to get what is standard for a light bulb, which is, does anyone know? 60 hertz, 110 to 120 volts.
So it depends on the light bulb, I guess?
It does. Well, all light bulbs usually work when you plug them into your household power strip. But they're usually, oops. I did not know those were connected. They weren't supposed to be. And it's possible that I just check the...
So this is science in action, kids. This is why we have the gloves of science.
This is exactly why we have the gloves of science. What would have happened if I weren't wearing the gloves of science?
You'd be getting a shock of science.
Yes, and I don't want that. Even though my name is Shaka, do not want that shock. All right, well, let's see if this is still working.
So I think it goes without saying, kids, don't try this at home. Do it under the supervision of someone from the California Science Center.
And maybe when they're a little bit better prepared. No.
It's a Sunday, it's the weekend.
All right, so we saw what would happen with a parallel circuit. What do we expect to happen when I connect 2 light bulbs through a series circuit, when they're connected one after the other?
So instead of basically each one getting fed its own supply of electricity, they'll both be taking the same supply of electricity. Anyone, young scientists in the room, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to be as bright?
Yes, dimmer.
Dimmer. That's what we think. Okay, let's see if that's true.
All right.
So right now they're both basically taking the same drink out of the same glass here.
And I'm also going to have this guy plugged in so we can see if anything changes in that specific light. Ah, I need more hands.
I know, I was thinking the same thing when I had all these papers, and I bet you Tesla has like 8 hands. I think I read that somewhere.
All right, I'm going to take off a glove, which don't do this. But it's not plugged in. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. All right. I'm ready now. I'm going to leave this glove off for one more second. So I'm going to plug this guy in so we can see if we notice anything that changes. This guy is probably pretty bright. Anybody?
Feel like you're being interrogated in the first row yet?
Why did you come here? What is your name?
Are you a KPCC member?
So now, do we remember how bright these were?
Yeah.
Are they noticeably brighter or dimmer? Dimmer. And that's because we are dropping 120 volts, but we're doing it over 2 light bulbs. And so each one gets about 60. And so that is one of the disadvantages of using series circuits versus parallel circuits.
So in this one, each one's sort of taking the same voltage, but we have to split it between this and this. Isn't that kind of how Christmas lights work?
Well, that's a good question. I have Christmas lights. They're not actually going to be plugged in today, but some of them are connected via series circuits, but some of them are also parallel. You'll always notice in Christmas lights that there are about 2 or 3 different wires going through. And so some of them are connected together, and some of them are actually on their own parallel circuit. But they all get the same voltage drop. And actually, we're going to be playing with some Christmas lights outside. That's the activity for the kids, that if you guys stay a little bit after, you'll be able to play with some Christmas lights and actually get an up-close and personal experience like this.
So there was one other thing you wanted to show us about electricity. One thing that helps keep in mind is that we don't when we use electricity, basically, it's just energy, and we use it to transfer some kinds of energy to others. Sometimes we start with burning a fuel, and that helps create some sort of reaction that will turn into electricity, and we'll use that to send somewhere else. Other times, we will use a hydroelectric power plant. We'll use water to turn something, and then that'll transfer the energy of the waterfall into electricity, and we'll use that to power your Xbox. But basically, it means energy in, energy out. That's how the systems work. So we're going to show you a real simple demonstration here that shows you how energy can basically be turned into electricity.
So, does anyone know what the exact opposite of a motor is? A generator. And so these are actually really cool. These are called hand crank generator flashlights. And we can play with these outside too. And so what this does is it takes the energy that you guys put in to make a light that shines in your face. He's not having any of it. He's not happy at all. Look at him. He's just straight facing it. Look at that.
I think he's thinking about the whole system in his head. He's kind of trying to work out a better generator.
Are you going to make a better generator? This one's pretty good. I mean, using 2 magnets and this spinning coil here, I can make light. Can you do that? I got a smile. That is all I wanted. I got a smile.
So if you come outside later, we can show you exactly how these work. But basically, we're turning the energy of Shaka squeezing his hand into, where does it go first? It goes to?
This actually spins this magnet here, which creates an electromagnetic field that powers these coils and creates energy in the form of electricity, which is transferred into light.
So in this case, it's basically like you're the battery.
Yeah, I am the battery, and I am making this work. And that is one of the cool things about electricity. There are so many ways to use it, make it, and do different things with it. And so I'm going to have some activities outside. We're going to learn this stuff more up close and personal. And am I done?
Let me ask you two more questions.
Never mind, not done.
Okay, so that's a good little primer. We hopefully got a little bit of an understanding there of electricity and why it's important. Now, in Tesla's time, there was a big war going on. They called it the War of the Currents. Maybe more exciting than Star Wars. I'll let you guys decide. But this was a war basically between people who favored alternating currents and direct currents. Thomas Edison loved the direct current system. He tried to build basically America's power on a direct current system. Tell me a little bit about why that would be the challenges a direct current system would face if you're trying to power, say, New York City.
One of the things was something that we just talked about was distance. When you're transferring things like voltages over very far distances, you usually need to have the current be very low. And that means there's not as much movement of electrons. You want the voltage to be high. But getting the voltage to be high in direct current using batteries means the batteries would be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the wires would have to be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I heard some people say that as you make the system bigger, these copper wires would grow from this to this to this, till eventually have them the size of a sewer. And that's a lot of copper. That's expensive. If you're going to power a city having to use sewer-sized copper wires, you might want to make sure you're well-funded.
Yeah. And so the advantage of alternating current is you can keep your wires relatively small, and it's very easy using transformers. If you guys have ever, I don't know.
Not the robots.
Not the robots. But the things that are outside of your house on the telephone poles, the little round cylindrical boxes, they are able to change the voltage from a very high voltage to a very low voltage, or vice versa. And so they can send out the electricity at very high voltage, say 200,000 volts, which is what a Tesla coil would be. And then they can drop it down at your house to 120 volts, which is not easy to do when you're doing direct current, but it is very easy to do when you do alternating current.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit more. Thank you, everybody. Everybody give a big thanks to Shaka for coming up and shocking us with some electricity.
Thank you.
He'll be outside if you want to try any of these experiments for yourself. I highly recommend it. It's kind of fun to play with some of these electrical gizmos. All right, so we talked about AC and DC, alternating current, and direct current. So let's think back to Tesla's day, say the 1880s, perhaps, one of the times in which he was thinking about this stuff. You know, electricity was really new then. We didn't have all the systems we have now. In fact, a lot of people still use candles. Imagine walking into your house and you can't just flip a switch and get light. You have to go and find your candle and get a match, and you turn that on, and it's not that bright, and, you know, good luck trying to charge your iPhone. That just wouldn't happen back then. So that's the world that Tesla was living in. And there were lots of businessmen who wanted to solve this problem. People started figuring out how to channel electricity and send it to various houses so that we could do things like turn a blender on, have a blender, all sorts of stuff like that. So one of the guys was George Westinghouse, a guy named George Westinghouse. Has anyone ever heard of George Westinghouse? He's maybe not as common. But you probably, if you ever had to shop, I'm looking at the kids in the room for a washing machine, am I right? Or some sort of dishwasher. There are a lot of Westinghouse appliances. He's still kind of known for that. He loved alternating current. Tesla, like I said before, was into this direct current. He was a DC guy. Edison, sorry. Tesla came along, and he's going to basically do something that's really going to change the way we think about these two systems. So at the time, Edison was actually really well known, and his system was gaining a lot of traction. Tesla came up with an ingenious invention that helped tip the scales towards alternating current. And we're going to talk a little bit about that now. So we're going to watch a little bit of a documentary here that was produced by PBS, New Voyage Communications, directed by Robert Youth.
Early electric motors operated
motor.
on direct current electricity, but required a system of sparking connections to induce a rotary effect in the machine.
I remarked to my professor that the design of generators and motors could be greatly improved by using currents that alternated. He embarrassed me greatly in front of my classmates, saying, "Mr. Tesla will never accomplish this. It is a perpetual motion scheme."
Meanwhile, in America, Thomas Alva Edison had begun to experiment with vacuum tubes, producing the first commercial incandescent light bulb in 1878. Edison and Tesla would soon cross paths in a gargantuan technological struggle between direct and alternating current electricity. In 1880, Tesla moved to Budapest, where he found employment with the Central Telegraph Office. Here, his idea for an AC motor began to haunt him.
In my room, I could hear the ticking of a watch with 3 rooms between me and the timepiece. A carriage passing at a distance of a few miles fairly shook my whole body. The whistle of a distant locomotive vibrated so strongly in my ears that the pain was unbearable. To recover from these attacks, I took long walks in the city park. One afternoon, which is ever present in my recollection, the sun was just setting and reminded me of Goethe's glorious passage. The glow retreats. Done is the day of toil. Upon its track to follow soaring. As I uttered these inspiring words, the idea came to me like a lightning flash. I fell to my knees and drew a diagram in the ground.
Tesla perceived a whirling field of energy. He suddenly knew he could recreate this rotating field by powering the coils of a motor in different steps or phases, like the pistons of an engine. The resulting forces of magnetic attraction and repulsion would literally twist the rotor in a circle, the electrical equivalent of the wheel. And all this was accomplished with alternating currents. It would soon turn the wheels of industry around the world.
All right, so that's from a documentary called Tesla, Master of Lightning, produced by PBS, New Voyage Communications, directed by Robert Youth. And you can stream that, actually, if you want to learn more about Tesla, on PBS Video, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, iTunes, and Netflix. So feel free to watch that if you want to get some more Tesla after this. But it reveals a couple things about Tesla. First of all, he drew inspiration from lots of different sources. In this, he was walking and thinking of a poem, and then he suddenly was like, wow, I think I got my motor, I'll figure it out. He was somebody who liked poetry, he liked arts, he was inspired by all sorts of things, like we mentioned his cat. He had just weird thoughts as a kid that later he turned into inventions. He was a deep thinker, and it shows the importance that even as scientists, we should be thinking and looking to all kinds of thought, all kinds of art and information to help draw our ideas. It's really a richer mind is one that can see beauty and science all over the place. Tesla clearly did that. He was a lover of lots of culture, and he used a lot of that in his inventions. Second, though, you noticed in this clip, they talked about him just taking a walk in the park, and then boom, he had this inspiration for his Tesla AC motor, his alternating current motor. Now, in reality, he'd been thinking about this problem for a long time. He had been pondering and working out the ideas in his head, but it goes back to what I mentioned about Tesla's vivid imagination. He was famous for the fact that he would think out his ideas in his head before he actually wrote them down. He wasn't one of these people who was sketching all the time and writing, and he often said he would just work it all out, perfectly design it in his head, so he had all the components in his imagination. And then when he got close enough that he thought he could build it, he would go out and build it. That's very unusual. I don't know, do any of you think of things that way? When I'm cooking, I don't think of everything. I just kind of go with the flow and experiment, and I try some salt, and I try some pepper. You know, I think Tesla, if he was cooking, would imagine the recipe, the cooking instructions, and everything, and then go for it. It's a very unique kind of mind, and that might be what made him so special as an inventor. He was able to do so much work in his brain rather than on paper. But it's also one of the reasons there's so many mysteries about Tesla. He didn't write all of his ideas down, and so there's a vast sea of potential ideas he could have had that we might know nothing about. He may have invented the iPhone back in 1894, but we don't know because he didn't write down all of his ideas, and he certainly had plenty of them. We're lucky, though, he wrote down the specs for this motor. So if any of you want to try to build it, there you go. Simple, right? This is actually from the patent of one of his motors. I think. I'm not the best at reading these. And this was great because it solved a lot of problems, right? The DC motor, which Edison was using in his system, it sparked. It wasn't as efficient at pushing out power. This was a nice, simple design. And when people started figuring out how it worked and what it was for, they were really excited about the possibilities. But Tesla had to go out and sell it, make people really think, switch to this. Don't listen to Edison. Don't listen to his crowd. We've got a better motor. We've got a better system. One of the ways they did that was he teamed up with George Westinghouse to promote alternating current. And they had to show it off. They had to get people excited. What do? You go to a World's Fair. They won a contract in 1893 to supply the lights for the World's Fair in Chicago, which was a really big deal. People were still getting used to this idea of electric lights, and for showing it at the World's Fair was about the same as getting like primetime slot on TV today. And Tesla and Westinghouse built this system, and it just blew people's minds. They loved it. Imagine you've gone your entire life seeing mostly candles, and then suddenly you're seeing an entire, field of lights set up at a giant World's Fair where there's all sorts of people doing what to you looks like magic with all these great new inventions. Tesla showed off a lot of his inventions there, and people got really excited about them. It was shortly thereafter that he won a contract to harness the power of Niagara Falls, which, has anyone actually been there? Anyone got married there or visited? Any of the kids, have you guys ever seen Niagara Falls? It's kind of far for us, but it's really spectacular. When you see those, it's basically a giant waterfall just throwing water down at the earth. It's really magnificent, a lot of energy there, and of course people thought if we could tap that and turn it into electricity, that would be awesome. And who's going to do that? Edison and Tesla and Westinghouse fought over it. Eventually they went with the alternating system, in part because they loved Tesla's motor. So he got to basically turn that into power. This is a much more modern photo. He turned that into power for lots of people, including eventually all the way down to New York City. So people would go to Broadway and see the light bulbs flashing, and that was the alternating current system that Tesla helped invent. So it took them a while to build this, but it really put AC on the map, alternating current on the map. And eventually, even Edison had to switch over to that system because it just became so much more efficient. If we had stuck with DC, we might have had these giant generators Shaka was talking about, stationed every couple miles, powering houses. They would be sparkly and noisy, and we'd all have headaches all the time. Tesla's like, guys, I got you. You're not going to have to deal with that. His system was much more efficient. Things got worked out, and he basically decided to move on after a while from his motor and promoting it and think of some new things. So he wanted to come up with a new idea that would revolutionize the way we use electricity. And he started thinking, like, what's the worst part about electricity? It's all these wires, What if we could do a system where you didn't even need wires, Throw the AC thing out. He's basically trying to stomp on his own great invention here. What if you could just send electricity through the air? He got really into this idea, and he started doing these demonstrations where he would basically send electricity through the air, and you can see there he's got what looked like lightsabers in his hand. He would basically send the electricity through the air in a room, and he could pick up a light bulb, and it would automatically light up. I mean, this was blowing minds. This was like wizardry stuff. Totally like magic show. He would just be doing these great demonstrations that were supposed to be science talks, but instead he was basically, like something you'd go to Vegas to see. All these people packed in these auditoriums to watch Tesla, the magician, the wizard, they called him, some people, do these tricks with light. So this was a big idea to basically eliminate wires. If he could pull it off, it would have changed everything as we know it. One of the ways he started thinking about doing that was an invention he called the Tesla coil. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen this. It's basically a giant sparking toy of some kind. Or toy's not even the right word. It's, I don't know. I don't know exactly how to explain a Tesla coil. I wish I could just show you what it did. Oh, wait. We have a video here from a Tesla coil that was built in-house at KPCC.
There was a little bit of tension when I first plugged it in. Luckily, it did not blow up. I've been interested in electronics since I was a little kid. I built a small Tesla coil in high school. I think it's important, mainly because it's more visceral. It's not just theoretical. You can actually see it. The kids get excited about it, of course, but I actually get sometimes a better reaction out of the adults. They want to look at it, they want to examine it. Only build one if you have a deep respect for how dangerous electricity could be. If you touch that primary coil when it's on, you're pretty much done. If anything can make science more interesting, I'm all for it.
So that's Lance Harper. He works here at KPCC, and he just built this Tesla coil in our basement. I guess some of it at his home, and he brought it here, and he started showing it off. And that's kind of what inspired us to do this event, actually. For safety reasons, we're not going to fire it up, although, yeah, we would have liked to. But you can come and take a look at it later. You can get a picture with it. Selfies with Tesla coils, I think, is a hashtag we need to get started today. But here you can see, Lance was able to build this out of, tools you can buy today at a lot of, shops around town. You don't have to go too far. In fact, part of it is even, there's a pie tin, part of it you can come see later. There's a saw blade on the top, and this part under here is a pie tin, your standard, cooking pie tin. Anyway, if you want to see a Tesla coil in action, there's actually a really great place to go, not too far from here, the Griffith Observatory. And they have one they'll fire up, and we're going to talk about it with someone who regularly fires it up. Bill Gruneberg, are you here? Come on up. So he works for the Griffith Observatory. He handles the Tesla coil there, and he's going to tell us a little bit about it.
First of all, I'd like to say I never handle the Tesla coil. We're outside of what's known as a Faraday cage, which grounds out all the electricity that comes from the Tesla coil. I just push a button outside of a glass thing. But I've been working there almost 2 years. I have to say that's still my favorite thing to do at Griffith Observatory is to hit that button and run the Tesla coil.
And is yours bigger than ours? I've been there, but it's kind of hard to see it.
It's a little bigger, yeah. Ours it's kind of on a platform, and the top of it is probably 10 feet off the ground. And raise your hand if you've ever been to Griffith and seen look at this. You've seen the Tesla coil. It's like 90% of the room. Well, I'm done here. You probably heard my talk.
So I want to talk about this invention. Tesla was really interested in this idea of wireless electricity. Right. What was his vision with the Tesla coil? Why was he so interested in building this device?
Because he was kind of a man of the people. He had a vision of getting electricity to everybody. He didn't care about the finance side. He didn't care so much about the economics or making a profit. He just wanted electricity to get to everybody. And this is a great way to do it. And what his idea was, we talk about your Tesla coil here, or ours might be 8, 10 feet tall. He wanted to build them hundreds of feet tall and put one in the middle of every community and then just wirelessly broadcast as radio waves electricity to everybody. So all you'd really need is to hang a little antenna outside your window and you would get free electricity, and that was the idea.
So what if KPCC could team up with Tesla and we could beam you our radio while getting your electricity to power your radio? Could that have ever happened?
Well, your radio waves are a form of electrical
right.
power.
If we could do both on the same frequency and just,
Yeah, they're electromagnetic, I should say. They're not electrical because it's not a current so much, but it is photons traveling in waves, and that is a form of electromagnetic energy.
So he basically wanted to set up these Tesla coils everywhere and let free energy reign. That didn't catch on.
No.
We don't have Tesla coils everywhere. What was some of the limitations of this system?
There are a whole lot of problems with it. One of them, the first problem is really just, like I said, the finance, the economics of it. You can't charge people for something that you're just sort of spraying out everywhere. Today we have wires coming to our house. We have a little meter on that wire, and we can tell that the Joneses may be using twice as much electricity as the Smiths, and so we charge them twice as much. We don't, but the power companies do. And so the idea, to build a Tesla coil, of course, especially one hundreds of feet tall, would cost a lot of money. And of course, the Tesla coil doesn't generate electricity, doesn't create electricity. It has to have a power source, probably a coal-fired power plant in those days or something, and then it just wirelessly transmits the electricity. But you can't really meter that. You can't tell how much people are using. You can't cut them off if they don't pay their bill, which is sad. But and Tesla didn't care about any of that. But the people who are going to put money into these did. So that's one reason that we don't use them today. They're not what we would call a good business model.
Another reason, we weren't able to fire this up, but if we did, they're very loud.
Which makes me very sad. They're very loud, and there's sort of a weird trade-off too, because the farther you get from the Tesla coil, the weaker the current you get.
Right.
And it drops off exponentially, which means very, very quickly. So if you live close to the Tesla coil, you get nice, reliable electrical current throughout your house, but you have to live with a really loud noise. Those lightning bolts make quite a lot of noise. If you live farther away, you can sleep at night, but you get way less reliable current.
Right, your nightlight wouldn't be powered. So.
Right. And you have to you have to distribute electricity 24/7. It has to happen all day and night long because we have refrigerators. We don't want our food to go bad. We have street lights. We have all kinds of things. Your clock radio that wakes you up in the morning, whatever. You require energy, electrical energy all day long. So these things would have to be zapping away 24/7.
A question I would love to see if you could answer, I don't know. Why is the lightning that's coming out of electricity purple?
That's important. That has little to do with the purpose of the thing, but the reason it's purple is that when you excite atoms, different kinds of atoms, with electricity, they radiate different colors of light. It's different wavelengths, and that has to do with, again, those atoms that you're talking about, and the electrons sort of going to higher and lower energy levels. And so it just so happens that our atmosphere is 80% nitrogen. Most of the air we breathe is nitrogen, and nitrogen tends to glow that sort of light violet, faint violet color. And so that's why the lightning bolts look sort of violet.
It's a very pretty color. I wonder if anyone's
It is, yeah.
designed like a makeup palette maybe based around that, or...
I don't know. We do have I always send people after I do our Tesla talk, I always send them down to the other end of the hall to the periodic table of elements talk, because there's a little tube of nitrogen. You hit the gases button in our periodic table display. It sends a little current through this tube of nitrogen, and it's the same color. It's a faint violet color.
Right. Yeah. So even though the Tesla coil didn't catch on, it's not now the household electrical device that powers our cities.
Right.
Where are some examples where we see some of Tesla's ideas related to this in play?
Well, this was used actually kind of as is in the early form of radio, which was telegraphy. When we had telegraphs, that spark gap sort of technology was actually used in that. So it was used directly as is in spark gap technology in telegraphy. There isn't a lot of this that was invented for this device beyond that we use today. But there are things like inductance, which we heard about earlier. You take your electric toothbrush, which has a plastic handle, and put it onto a plastic device, and it charges it. And that's because of inductance. That's because there's a magnetic field being generated by that little charging device that then charges your toothbrush. So inductance is used very widely.
So that's sort of the similar idea of sending electricity without wires.
Right.
In that case, I've always wondered that. You put your little toothbrush on there, and I'm like, I'm not plugging it in really. Why is this working?
I know. And one last thing is, we call this a Tesla coil, but it's really the Tesla 2 coils. There's a flat coil on the bottom that doesn't have a lot of coils on it, a lot of winds, and then there's a very intricate wired coil going up. And this is an example of inductance. When you send electricity through that first coil, you create a magnetic field around it. And then the magnetic field, if you put another coil into that magnetic field, that induces a current in the second coil. And that's how, and so without those two even being physically attached, they're not wired together at all. You actually send a current right through two coils with no connection.
Oh, interesting.
And it's the same kind of idea. And I understand, I'm not too familiar with this, but I understand they're still trying to work on more modern versions of home wireless power, where you have a device at home that just, sort of like your Wi-Fi sends internet signal all through your house, and this would work with actual electricity. But I don't know how far along they are with that, or whether they've gotten rid of the lightning bolts, which would be annoying.
Tesla, of course, liked lightning bolts. There
he did.
Is sitting with a bunch of them.
I have to tell you one sad truth about this picture. I understand it's a double exposure. He was not actually sitting there when those lightning bolts were being were being propagated there.
Yeah, I think that would be a little much to expect him to just be reading a book. I mean, that's a little bit overkill if you're just trying to get some
Sure.
light for reading a book.
Yeah, right, yeah.
But this is what our homes would have looked like in Tesla's world, everybody. Not quite, but
Or the center of our town, anyway.
yeah. What would happen if I got sparked by that purple lightning
Well,
coming
as
out
I
of there?
understand it, the lightning bolts themselves at the top are high voltage but low current, and
Right.
so I don't know that you would be electrocuted by them, but they would burn your skin very badly. They're a lot like lightning bolts. In fact, they're exactly like lightning bolts. They're a discharge through the air, which is not a good conductor. Air, our atmosphere, is a terrible conductor. It's more of an insulator. But lightning bolts get through, and this charge gets through because it just builds up so much charge on one side. It has to go somewhere, and so it finds its way through the air. And so you would probably get burned very badly.
Burned,
like
yeah.
You would with lightning.
Tesla, actually, one of the neat things about him, if you read books or watch documentaries, he loved demonstrating currents, and he would find all these ways to basically electrocute himself and show that it wasn't harmful.
Right.
Some people said that he would even glow sometimes. He would do experiments where he would just be running a current through him, and it would be safe, but enough that he had, what is it, St. Elmo's fire? Is that the name of the
Yeah,
term?
he would, as I understand it, he would have electrical current sort of spark right across his body, and after they turned the current off, there would still be little sparks going
Yeah.
on.
He would say that it was good for you, actually. He argued for a while that it helped his depression to be having these currents run through him. And as people who have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest know, there was a time in which we treated depression using electrical currents for better or for worse. So, in some ways, he was ahead of his time in his conception of what electricity is and how it could be used. And certainly way more adventurous than most people who would not even go near this new kind of magical technology.
Right.
So, anything else you want to mention about the Tesla coil, the one at Griffith Park? Where'd you guys get it? I've always wondered. Did Tesla is this actually one of his, or?
No, he did not build ours, but we like to think he saw it in action because ours was built in 1910. The observatory didn't open until 1935, but it was built in 1910, and it was, I think, one of a pair of Tesla coils that were just fun demonstrations outside of Madison Square Garden. And Tesla lived in New York, where Madison Square Garden is, in New York City, in those years. So we like to think he saw them in operation, but they were built by Ovington, I think his name is, or Overton. I'm sorry, I don't know. You can Wikipedia that, but he might have seen it in action, but he didn't actually build ours. And then it was actually owned by a doctor who believed that electricity and electromagnetism were good healing. There's still people today who buy devices for magnetic devices that and they swear by them. I have friends who swear by the healing power of electromagnetism. I don't know that there's any science behind that, but there are people who use it. And so this doctor used that for some years, and then when he retired, I think it was in 1937, he gave his to, I believe he donated it to Griffith Observatory.
Wow, so it's a really old Tesla coil.
It is a very
It's
old
had its
Tesla coil.
100th birthday. You said it was built in 1910?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
Did you guys get it any cake?
I
or-
don't think we did.
That's too bad. Maybe you could have cooked the cake in there with the Tesla. Just
That's
put it on top.
interesting. Light the candles anyway, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, Bill, thanks so much for coming and joining
Sure,
us. Everybody
my
give him a
pleasure.
big round of applause. Come see him at the
Thank
Griffith
you.
Observatory. Bill Grunenberg, everybody. So we're going to move this out of the way. Tesla, of course, like we've basically been telling you, dreamed really big. He saw the goal of scientists like himself to be more of an explorer rather than a farmer. So he likened some scientists like himself as kind of Lewis and Clark, treading new ground, finding new things. And it was up to other people to be the ones to take those ideas, take those lands and farm them and really work out the patents and the inventions and the kinks and stuff. So that kind of means he wasn't the best at making money, as we've mentioned a few times. He would think big, dream big, and not always turn it into practical devices. He tried, though, to do that later in his life. And he got, no, this is not Tesla. This is actually a rock star using a Tesla coil to have some fun. People still use them today for all kinds of demonstrations. They're one of the most exciting things in science, I think, is seeing a Tesla coil. So I really recommend you go check out one of the ones here in LA. So in around 1900, Tesla got a huge chunk of money from J.P. Morgan, who was a big financier at the time. And he promised Morgan that he would use that money to build a tower, which we see here, Wardenclyffe Tower in Long Island. His goal was to use this to transmit radio or some sort of signal across the ocean to basically create communication wirelessly. And also his secret agenda, which he didn't quite make clear until later, was that he was going to do this free power thing that he wanted to do really badly. So he was going to basically use this to power people all over New York with free electricity. So he built this for a long time. He used a lot of the money up, but at the same time, an Italian inventor named Guglielmo Marconi was building basically what became the modern radio system. Even though he was arguably using some of Tesla's technology, he beat Tesla to the punch here. And Tesla, for all his genius, wasn't the first to really get radio on the market as a practical device. So the bottom kind of fell out of this tower. J.P. Morgan stopped giving him money. Eventually, it shut down around 1906. It never really was fully operational. And this is where Tesla started to find himself in a difficult situation. Most of his life, he was this sort of genius wonder kid, this magician of science and electricity. Suddenly, people were writing things like, "Oh, this is Tesla's $1 million folly," and they were saying, was this a big scam the whole time? Was he just building these towers and getting money? He started struggling to keep people interested in funding his inventions, and this is kind of a marked point in his life where things kind of turned. He was an odd and interesting guy. He never married. He claimed that being married, having a woman in your life would distract him from his inventing, so he spent most of his time in his lab. Although, by all accounts, he was a pretty snappy dresser. I mean, we saw what he looked like. He was handsome. People said he was very charming. He was friends with people like Mark Twain, socialite. He was devoted to his work, though. He also had odd characteristics. He was obsessed with threes. Someone once, I read somewhere that he would walk 3 times around a block before he entered a building, or when he would go eat his dinners at restaurants, he asked for 18 napkins to polish his silverware and plates because 18 is divisible by 3. He didn't like shaking hands. He had a weird fear of pearl necklaces and other women's jewelry. He drank a glass of whiskey a day with the intent of living to 150. Now, that one, I think he might have been onto something, but I'll let you know when I get to 150. He would also do these crazy experiments. So, I mean, think about this. You're living at a time where electricity is brand new, and here was a guy who would do things like he went to Colorado for a while, and he built this lab where he would shoot lightning out of the top of his building, and all these people in this small town were kind of blown away by this, guy on the hill channeling the forces of nature. He played with a machine that could shake a building. There's a story that he had this oscillator in his lab, and he was firing it up, and he kept cranking up the power and cranking it up until suddenly down the street, windows were shaking and breaking, and horses were jumping up in panic, and the cops were rushing around trying to figure out what was going on. They thought it was an earthquake in New York, and they ran down to Tesla's lab, and just when they opened the door, there was Tesla smashing this thing with a sledgehammer, being like, you guys just missed a really interesting experiment, but I don't think I'm going to try that one again. It almost brought the whole house down. He even came up with an idea for a death ray, and this was very controversial. He came up with it later in his life. He started making it known. He basically thought he would create this beam. Imagine this, where if an army's flying at you with all their planes, you could just shoot it up and wipe out the entire army. Now, this sounds pretty menacing. This is kind of where he got the reputation of maybe a mad scientist. It's the same ideas we would think of associated with today, a mad scientist. His idea was actually not mad at all. He was not an angry guy. He wanted to bring world peace. He thought if everybody's got a death ray, we'd stop fighting, right, guys? Unfortunately, as we've seen with the atom bomb, that's not exactly how things have worked out with giant weapons. But Tesla was very interested in this idea of saving the world through superior technology. He even came up for a while with a radio-controlled boat that he thought you could, sort of make a torpedo out of, and it would go through the ocean and attack everyone's ships. No one could fight if all your ships sank as soon as you put them out in the water. War's over, Tesla coils power the world, and everyone's happy. Of course, none of these really caught on, and he struggled in his later life to find support for his ideas. So he fell into poverty. He was living in a hotel in his waning years. At this time, one of his greatest joys was feeding pigeons. And if any of you have ever done that, it's a very meditative thing. You often sort of can maybe just watch the pigeons and assume they have personalities. Tesla actually fell in love with one of the pigeons, reportedly. There was a white one that he really just thought was beautiful, and he said when it died, he had a vision that it came to him and let it know he was dying. So maybe all the jolts of electricity might have done something to him. He was always a creative, interesting guy. He got a little weird at the end there, but he eventually did pass away at the age of 86. He lived pretty close to that 150, or for the time, pretty late into his life. At the New Yorker Hotel, he passed away on January 7th, 1943. And at the time, he'd gone through ups and downs in his career. But when he died, people took a moment to reflect on all the things that Tesla had brought them. Today, even, we have Tesla cars. I understand there's one out in the lot, even, which bear his name because they use electric motors. The AC system, by the time he died, had caught on, and everybody used it. So people took for granted what Tesla had brought them. I think The best eulogy I heard digging through the archives was from New York's Mayor LaGuardia, who gave this touching reading on the radio the day Tesla died. It was written by Luis Adamek, who was a Slovenian-American author, and we're going to listen to a little bit of that now. It's crackly, it's old, and it's pretty amazing.
His name was Nikola Tesla. He died in poverty, but he was one of the most useful and successful men who ever lived. A few years ago, a fellow scientist of Tesla's, Dr. A.B. Barrand, wrote about him in his book, Were we to eliminate from our industrial world the result of Tesla's work, the wheels of industry would cease to turn, and our electric trains and cars would stop. Our towns would be dark, our mills and factories dead and idle. Should Tesla's work be suddenly withdrawn, darkness would prevail, and we would slump into barbarism. So it is true. Tesla is not dead. He is very much alive among us. Among us is the triumph of his life, his achievement, which we celebrate here.
That is a really touching tribute, and of course,
Tesla is not dead!
Wait,
Tesla is alive!
Nikola
Hello,
Tesla!
everybody, welcome
Whoa,
to
whoa.
my day!
Tesla, how did you get here?
I've come from the future! Wait, what year is it? I've come from the past.
Is this some new technology you're working on?
Well, I can't tell you too much about it. It hasn't been patented yet. I'm sure you'd all like to know. Just say it is a wireless transmission of me to you.
Awesome. Well, can we interview you? Do you mind just coming up here?
I
it's...
suppose so, since I'm here. Yeah,
All right,
fascinating.
everybody, Nikola Tesla, apparently from the past, coming. Hey, I hope that, I should have said no spoilers. I didn't know you were going to be here, but you don't make it. I'm just going to let you know.
Who does?
So sit down. This is great to have you, Tesla. I have all these questions.
Of course, yes.
So welcome to the future.
Thank you.
You look good. We don't dress that nicely anymore, tragically.
This clock is fascinating.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's digital. Do you digital? No?
Don't know what that means, but
Well,
I'm sure it's great.
You'll get there, yeah. So, I've always wanted to know, where do your ideas come from? I was trying to explain it to the audience here about how you're this deep thinker, but it's tough. You just seem to come up with the weirdest, coolest stuff.
You mentioned earlier, I heard they appear in my mind, and I think if you read things and you live a life that is varied and interesting, then anything can spark an idea, and sometimes it just springs fully formed, and sometimes you don't have time to write it down, then sometimes you get zapped and you forget it. So I would recommend somebody else doing this to, write down things more often. But
Yeah, that might have been good. You should go back and think about that. How many of these ideas came after the glass of whiskey?
well, it's part of another one of my patented techniques. So.
Yeah. So, you had this crazy work ethic. We were talking about that. You would work, sometimes I heard when you were a student from 3 in the morning to 11 at night, no
Yes.
weekend breaks. You just
Yes.
geared for it.
You must.
Didn't you
do
need to let
this.
them recharge? Why work so hard?
Listen, I am a scientist, and you know what that means? It means you must perform experiments. And I figure everybody else I know is already trying not working. So I will try working, and then we can compare the results.
Fair enough. All right, I guess it worked. Now that we have you, I really want to ask about Edison. We talked about the current wars. There was a little bit of a feud. I've heard people say that you guys were mortal enemies. Other people it was a friendly tete-a-tete. How would you describe your relationship with Edison? What was going on there?
Edison is a well, there's children here, so. I worked for Edison. When I came to this country, I worked for him in his laboratory, and he is, very smart man. Many smart people will work with him. And one thing you did not mention earlier was, Edison was the one who challenged me. He says, "You can make this alternating current. I would like to see it." He says, "I will give you $50,000." Which in today's money must be almost $60,000. and he says, "Can you make it?" I said, "Of course." So I make it. And I said, "Look, here it is, it works." And he says, "Well, about the money, I was joking."
Yeah, he said, this is just American humor. You don't get it.
You think I don't have a sense of humor? He thinks I don't have a sense of humor. I understand American. I have a great sense of humor.
Oh, yeah?
Would you like to hear a joke? Yeah. Yes, my mother would tell this joke. It's a very famous Serbian joke.
Okay.
There's a man and his wife. They're walking to the market, and they see another man with a horse coming, and the horse is very sick. And he says to this couple, he says, "Can you help my horse?" And then the man turns to his wife, turns to me, and says, "What do I look like? A horse doctor?" A horse doctor?
All right.
In Serbian, it's a pun.
Yeah. Well, hey, stick with the science, Tesla. So, we just went over your life there. Sorry about that. You're going to have a little bit of, I guess, less excitement when it happens, now that you know how it turns out. But any regrets?
Oh, well, I mean, this business with Edison, once he did not, honor his promise, which was very disappointing to me, I left there. And I went and worked for Westinghouse. And
Right,
Westinghouse,
George
great man.
Westinghouse.
He licensed my motor because I patented it. I said, "This will change the world." And he says, "I'll work with you. We can be partners." And he says, "I will make the motors, and then I will pay you a royalty.
Nice.
Every time this technology is utilized, you will get some money."
I think you're getting like $2.50 a horsepower.
Incredible. And so it was wonderful. But, I had shown Edison this motor. And the scientists, it's easy. It's so simple. My ideas are so simple. And you can make it. And so, they made their own version. And Westinghouse, he has to go to court. And it's
Right.
a huge struggle. And he spends so much money fighting this in court. And eventually he wins. Our patent is upheld, but it's so expensive. And he came to me. He says, "Nikola, this money, we have spent so much money. If we have to honor this royalty as well, the company will be destroyed. We will be destitute."
Right. I remember
said-
reading about this, yeah.
I said, "George, don't worry about the royalty." So you ask if I have regrets. But I'm sure do you still use alternating current or no?
Yeah, all the time, every day. It's pretty popular.
Well, you say I have yes, I have some regrets.
Well, we're not celebrating Edison today. We're celebrating you for all the great work you've done. You're in the future now.
you.
A lot of it is powered by stuff
Yes,
you've done. I don't know if you
this
saw the
is
Tesla car, but those are pretty expensive and swanky.
fascinating,
There's
yes.
no Edison car.
Hey.
Have you noticed anything about the future that really stood out to you so far?
Well, one thing I am very hopeful for, and I don't know if this is true yet, but maybe someday, I see young children here, maybe you can be a scientist and invent this. One of the ideas I had, I could never get fully realized that maybe we can do still. Imagine a central transmission office somewhere, and some man or woman is in there sending information out into the world, any information you want, the stocks, the news, the speeches, the music. And then, I know this is crazy. You can have like a terminal in your hand, and then you get this information wirelessly. And then, maybe you say, "What's the stocks?" And a ticker tape comes out or something. And I know this is absurd to hear this, but I think someday in the future, this will happen.
Yeah.
Someday. And imagine this. You have one of these devices. You don't have to go to the telegraph office. You don't have to sit by a telephone. You don't have to go to the post office. You don't have to get on a steamship. You don't have to go to a library. Imagine how productive this makes you. Imagine how focused you would be, how undistracted you would be with this. Oh, if this is invented, look out, future, huh? I can't
wow.
wait to see that. But it's crazy talk.
Yeah.
It's crazy talk.
Yeah, we might not tell you exactly how that worked out. We've been working on that.
Well, I wish you luck, because it would be amazing.
Yeah, after this, I recommend going back a couple years and meet a guy named Steve Jobs. You and he would have a lot to talk about.
I like anyone who's into jobs.
So, Tesla, do you got any questions for us about today's events?
Well,
you're the premier expert
see,
here.
some children, young scientists, I hope, here, and I wonder, maybe we can ask them to see if they have learned anything from this.
Yeah, let's do it. So, you're gonna ask them some questions, I
Sure,
guess.
sure.
Raise your hand, and we'll get a microphone here and see if you guys learned anything.
Yeah, so I will ask a question from the young scientists only, please. Who knows? Just can tell me. Just what is the type of current that I am famous for? Huh? Who can
Hands up.
remember?
Anybody?
Oh, here's one.
We got one over
Yes. Yes, don't be afraid.
Wait 1 second. We'll get a microphone.
The alternating current?
Yes, alternating current. Very good, very good.
Good.
You know, I will tell you, Sandon, these things, these induction motors, these dynamos, these transformers, there is more than meets the eye with them. Why is that
That's
funny?
good. You know, it's got a ring to it. I think that'll catch on. Yeah.
Is this a joke? Okay, here's another question. We can say, where was the place where I built the power station to harness the power of nature?
Oh, the first hydroelectric plant. Yeah.
Yes, to provide power for all of mankind. Where would I have made this power plant?
That's right.
Does
We
anybody
had
remember?
a picture of it.
Oh, hugely powerful. Oh, over here, yes.
Wait 1 second. We'll get a microphone to you.
I think I heard it, but let's see here.
Niagara Falls.
That's right, yes, Niagara Falls. Lovely place. There is such beauty there. But let me ask you this as well. Can anybody remember the tower I built in Long Island at Warden Cliff? Why would I do such a thing? Why would I build such a huge tower? What is the point of this?
Oh, we got a hand up right here.
Oh, yes,
front
over
row.
here. This gentleman here. Perhaps he can tell me, huh?
So you can send electricity through air.
That's right.
That's
oh,
right.
I would have liked to have made that happen. Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Electricity and radio waves. And also, this is an easy one, I'm sure, I hope, anyway. What is some inventions you have these days that use some of my inventions? Huh? I
Anybody
would like
think
to
of
learn what you have done with my research. This gentleman in the front again. Or anybody else, I'm sure there must be more than one
We got
thing.
one over here.
There must be more than one. Yes.
I can't take the suspense.
Oh, I'm excited to learn about it as well.
Yeah.
Yes, who was over here? Yes.
I'm gonna.
I hear someone thinking.
Wait, I'm thinking. Would a Tesla car count?
Yes.
Sure, it
uses
uses
an
electricity. Now it
electric
runs
motor,
on a
yeah.
battery, so it's probably a direct current. But it's got my name. So, you know, I will say if they're going to give me alternating current and direct current now, I will take them both.
Yeah.
Honestly, I will take them both. Is there any others that you? Oh, here's the young lady here.
Yeah, she looks like she's vibrating at a higher frequency. Maybe she's getting some electrical
Watch
current running
out! Be
through her.
careful.
Computer.
I'll take that too.
Yeah,
To be honest.
They're powered through the AC
They are
system.
powered
most of
through the
time.
alternating current system.
Yeah,
Yes.
the alternating current. Great. Do you guys have any questions
and
for
this gentleman here, of course, he has some.
phones? Well, let's see.
Let's find out.
Phones.
You know, if there is a wireless telephone, there must be at this point.
Yeah.
Anything wireless, I will claim that too.
Yeah. You were thinking about
I have
wireless
a patent
before
on the
anybody
word
else.
wireless.
That'll work out well for you in a little bit. Just hang around another 100 years or so.
The whiskey, I have this. It's easy.
Yeah.
Done.
The patent might not last to that point, but you know, if you can.
This is-
Great. Anyone want to ask a question? Any kids got a question for Tesla? Anything at all? Well, we got
Yes,
one
here.
adult here who wants to ask a question.
I'll
We'll
talk
see.
to anyone.
Stand up, please.
I just wanted to assure Mr. Tesla that as an owner of the Model S Tesla, it is powered by alternating current, which is converted or inverted to DC once it gets into the car. So alternating current powers it.
I'm very happy to hear this.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Take
for
that,
this-
horse and
this
buggy.
clarification. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm so glad you could join us. I mean, you should get. I don't know if you got to get back to your lab.
Oh,
or,
I mean, I've missed hours of work
Yeah.
from being here. But no, I will return. But it's so nice of you to have my picture. And,
Yeah.
And all these nice people here. So,
well, you know, we want to maybe take some more pictures with you while you're here. I mean, if anyone wants to, can they just come up and get a picture with you? You'll be amazed what cameras look like today.
I mean, I didn't bring my drop cloth for the cameras, but if you have brought your own, we can do this.
Yeah, I think we've got that covered. So if anybody wants a picture with Tesla, feel free. We'll have him in the coil here. You can come get a picture and post it somewhere and share, you know, let people know you met the man. Everybody, Nikola Tesla.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, yes.
All right, everybody. That was amazing. How often does that happen? Okay, never, I think. I hope you learned something today. We obviously have some young scientists in the room who learned a couple things. That's great. There's so much more you can find out about Tesla. There's books, there's websites, the documentary we mentioned. And if you want to know about more science events like this one, sign up at KPCC's table out there and join the Brains On mailing list so we can send you when we do more events like this for kids. You can listen to our podcast and you can get involved and participate in all the cool science we have going on here at KPCC Southern California Public Radio. So I want to give a quick shout out to our guests, Bill Gruneberg, Shaka Jaliwa. We had help from a guy named David Malky. I'm not sure exactly what he did, but someone says he was here. Tony Federico's our engineer. Jason Georges did the live stream. Lance Harper built our Tesla coil. The video from it was recorded by Maya Sugarman and Benjamin Brayfield. Doug Johnson made our little radio display back there. I highly recommend you check it out. You can see how far radio's come in a short amount of time. Dave McKeever is the technical director of the forum. Haley Waters is our forum coordinator. Jeanette, I hope I say this right, Morantos is our social media guru today. She's tweeting everything. Daniel Nicewander is one of our volunteers. And, of course, this program was mostly put together by Janice Wachi-Hurst, who is a brilliant mind, helped everything here at the forum happen smoothly today. So, everybody, we're going to have Tesla and the coil around. There's some experiments if you want to do them outside. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing this day about Tesla.